Last week we talked a lot about theory of painting and the reason that I paint the way that I do. Um, I showed you a whole bunch of examples of different art styles, the way that those work. I'm wearing headphones still. So I talked a lot about the way that different painting styles work and some specific tools that I use, namely the washes from Citadel, Games Workshop, and the contrast paints. And then those work really well with a whole bunch of other companies' paints. So I want to show you guys, I've got these dwarves that I've had sitting in a box for years. So they're getting some love tonight. They've got some resin bases on them from Secret Weapon Miniatures. It's like the Celtic, some kind of bases. But they've got little runes on them. You can't see it at all. So I'm going to take you through the steps to paint these guys. If you look at them, some of them have, like this dude, I think. Yeah. So I used a spray primer on him, and I missed large areas of his body and the base. So I'm going to go through some priming things really quickly, and then we're going to move on to the Zenithal spray. And then hopefully by, give me 7:15, give me till 8:15, we should be able to have all of these guys painted, at least to a decent standard. I don't know if I'll get to be able to finish the bases, but we'll give it a shot. So the first thing that I'm going to do is finish the black primer on here. I'm using the very cheapest airbrush that I could find that had decent reviews on it. It was a Master airbrush. I think it cost me $20 on Amazon several years ago, but I've used it a lot, and we're going to keep using it. It's been working fantastically for me. And I've got other airbrushes, and those work better, but the Master, part of the reason that I am using the Master brush right now is I'm trying to prove a point to myself and everyone else that cheap airbrushes, while not working just as well as other expensive airbrushes, they work just fine. And most people will never get to a stage where they're using the full potential of the airbrush. So right now, I've got some enamel paints, enamel primers. A particular brand is from AK Interactive. I really like them. They've been doing well. And oh man, that smell takes me back to 12-year-old me painting models, painting aircraft carriers and tanks and stuff. Just going over these really quickly, trying to make sure that I didn't miss anything. In the areas that I know that I did miss, I'm going to hit those again with some of this enamel primer. And yeah, we'll be good to go. I don't particularly like using the airbrush for like priming for Zenithal stuff. I love using the airbrush, but for actual priming, I prefer to use a spray can. It's generally much faster. It's cheaper if you're painting large batches of guys like I tend to do, or if you're doing terrain or vehicles or things like that. The sprays, like the spray cans, are way more economical. Yeah, I don't know what it was about this time. Maybe it was just really windy outside and didn't take the way that I wanted it to. All right, come on, paint. Okay, I've got fans going right now because I planned on using this enamel primer, and man, the fumes are strong. So I've got fans going, I've got an air filter going, I've got a good ventilation setup. If you're using things that are non-acrylic, even if you're using acrylic sprays and airbrushing a lot, you should definitely get some kind of mask. Or, I don't know, do it outside or something if you can. Okay, I think we got it all. I want to check this guy again just to make sure, because he had some missed spots. Yep, one little spot behind his shield. This guy had some missed spots, but I think, oh, underneath his beard right there. Yeah, we just about got it. Okay. So, I'm going to call that good. My compressor right now is set so that compressors are kind of interesting, and like we talked about last week, it's not an exact science, it's all art. You just got to figure out what works and then try to replicate that as consistently as possible. So when you use your compressor, the PSI goes down because you're using it, and it doesn't have that same stored up pressure. So you got to kind of decide like how much, what your PSI is, what your bar is going to be, and try to get close to that. But there's just a lot of factors involved with using compressors. So as soon as you bring the airbrush into it, everything that you thought you knew about painting kind of goes out the window, and everybody, I mean, there's there's no consistency. Everybody's stuff is different, and even the difference between using like water or a thinner or the amount of flow reducer that you have, it all just depends and makes everything a little bit different. Even the type of paint makes your mixture that you're spraying different and requires different amounts of pressure and different mixtures of air and different needle sizes, and it's kind of fun if you like messing around with stuff. If you don't like messing around with stuff, it is super frustrating. So for a long time, I just couldn't stand it. I didn't like the inconsistency of it and the uncertainty of airbrushing. So I used spray cans for a long time, and that worked really well. But now I enjoy the precision of an airbrush, and especially right now where I've got a lot of time, airbrushing is kind of nice. But if you're doing it a lot, for sure, make sure that you have a mask. Man, this black primer, this enamel primer, does not want to get out of the brush. I keep forgetting that I can't use water to clean this enamel. I've got to use a thinner to clean it. But the process is still the same. Another reason to keep your old nasty brushes is you can use them as airbrush cleaners. I've had this guy for years. All of the finish is worn off the brush. Like, it's all gross and got old inks and paints and stuff in it. It's pretty nasty, but it works really well. And it also has the cleanest bristles of any paintbrush that I've got, because it spends a lot of time in thinner and water getting cleaned out. So whenever I'm done using my airbrush, like if I'm really switching to a different substance, I like to run Windex through the brush. Some people don't like Windex, or they'll caution against it because it can say that it can degrade the rubber gaskets between some of the pieces inside the airbrush. I haven't found that to be the case. I have found that Windex works fantastically well for loosening up paint chunks and getting out like stubborn little things, pieces of paint that are hanging onto the inside of the airbrush. So I find that it works really well. And then after I use the Windex, I'll almost always go through and run just a couple of drops of distilled water through the brush, just to clean out the Windex and make sure that there's nothing else going on. Another thing you can do is plug the front, and then when you put air in it, it'll bubble up. So I'll do that several times to make sure that I don't have any large paint chunks that are clogging up the nozzle or the needle or anything. And yeah, there's a lot of steps to airbrushing, but as soon as you figure it out, as soon as you keep doing it for a long time, it gets much easier, and everything does start to become fairly intuitive. You'll get pretty good at it. So this is what I'm using. We were talking on Discord earlier about different whites and stuff. Whenever I'm airbrushing, I love to use white ink. So Ron, pick up some of this for your airbrush. It's going to be awesome. And then I put steel balls inside of everything. I told you that last week. With inks, the inks tend to separate pretty quickly. The white separates really fast. So you'll notice after even, 20 seconds or so of the white sitting in the airbrush, that it will start to separate, and your coverage goes down, and you gotta shake up the airbrush or do that bubble thing where you hold it, like you put your finger in front and then blow air through it. Let's see, what are we doing? So I like to thin my paints, my inks, about 3 to 1. There we go. So here we go. Come on, bud, you could use a little more color on you. A little more white. So the key with airbrushing your Zenithal primer stuff on is just do it super thin. Take your time, go on a bunch of layers. Don't put it on thick. The ink will spiderweb, just like any other paint, but the ink has a tendency to go on much smoother than normal paint does, and it'll give you a better result overall. Another thing when you're doing this is the white. Every color is really translucent, but with the white, you've really got to make sure that you've pushed it up to white, because it's easy to get a pretty decent gray that looks bright, but it's really not when you compare it to other miniatures that you have. So take your time, test it, make sure that you've got the actual color that you want on there, and then just do that a whole bunch of times, and you'll get good at figuring out how much to do it, how long to leave the brush there, and how much you can move the brush around, and you get really good at it. So that's my Zenithal priming for this dude. Next, do that bubbly thing to mix the paint up a little bit. Yeah, just take your time, do a good job, don't rush it. If you try to put too much air through the brush, or if you keep your brush too close, like if you stop moving it too, a lot of times you'll see that spider webbing come. That's when you get too much paint on the miniature and it doesn't have anywhere to go, so it starts to collect. And when it collects, the air coming out of the brush will move it around, and then it gets really streaky, and it just turns into drops. Drops of ink running around. And that is not a good thing for your finely detailed miniatures. Now you can do some really cool effects on glass, or things that are supposed to be glass with that. But overall, I try to avoid the spider webbing as much as possible. I want to put a little bit more on his face, a little bit more white on his face to make that highlight brighter, because that is the focal point of the miniature, or it's what people will see as the focal point of the miniature. And then on the back here, same thing. I kind of want people to notice that weapon on the back, and then the shield a little bit more, so we'll make that a little bit brighter than normal. Several coats. Make sure that you're going up close to white, because in theory, if you're going to paint these quickly, that white should be the very brightest spot, or the very brightest highlight, and then you won't have to paint any colors on top of that. You'll just, that needs to be gone, you'll just be able to apply the colors, your washes and such, and let those tint the miniature for you. And that's how you get the good results really fast. So I had my box of miniatures, right, that I posted on the Discord. I think it was just yesterday. But I was going through there, looking at stuff, and I found a whole bunch of dwarves in there. A couple of months ago, I was cleaning everything out of my house and looking through all the old boxes that I had, and I found a whole bunch of miniatures that had not seen the light of day in many years, and I decided that if I didn't collect them all in one spot, they would just stay scattered everywhere, and I didn't want to like forget about them and just let them sit there until I was an old man. So I pulled them all out, I put them in one spot, and then I came across them a couple of days ago and decided that I was going to paint them up. So I have some Space Wolves. They're actually Cybor miniatures. God, what do you call them? Celtic Warriors or something. So Cybor is I think it's spelled S-C-I-B-O-R. Cybor Miniatures makes resin miniatures and upgrade parts for Games Workshop stuff. Space Marines, but Imperial Guard, squats and things too, and Chaos Dwarves, and they make a lot of really cool things. I think they're out of Poland. But anyways, somehow over the years I got a hold of several of the Celtic Space Marine bodies and shoulder pads, but I didn't have the arms or heads that go with them, and I was just going to use Space Wolf bits to like fill in the gaps, and I never got around to doing that. So that's the same kind of thing. I found those guys last night in my box of miniatures and assembled them, cleaned them, and now I need to find a good base for them. I think I'm going to make bases for them instead of like printing bases or something. The weird thing about those miniatures is they're flat on the bottom. I'll show them to you in a second. The guys have like pelts or some kind of a piece of clothing in the middle of them between their legs that would prevent them from standing across something, and all of these bases kind of have all of these bases that I had planned on using kind of have a hump in the middle of them. So that was not going to work out. And most of the things that I would paint or that I would print still have like a ridge or some kind of spike or rock in the middle. So I can't use those for these Space Wolf Celtic Warrior Space Marines. So I'm just gonna make my own. Another cool thing about the airbrush is I sprayed a lot of paint on this guy. If you remember, this was the dude that had all of those really bright leftover parts that I missed. So he had a lot of primer on him. So with the airbrush, if you don't want to spray paint, you can just use it as a tool to push air onto the miniatures. And I'll do that often if I need something to dry quicker. I'll just use the airbrush and give some air on the miniatures, help it to dry a little bit quicker. This guy is cool. I think this one came in the old Warhammer Fantasy starter box, the Isle of Blood. No, that was High Elves and Skaven. So what was the one before Isle of Blood? You guys are screaming at me right now. It was called the Battle for Blackfire Pass. That's not right. It wasn't Blackfire Pass. It was something. The battle for some kind of pass. That's what this guy's from, in any case. Just look at the time. I gotta speed things up. I'm not gonna get these guys done in time. So the faster you go with the airbrush, the more kind of haphazardly the paint goes on the miniature, and you'll notice that your contrast starts to go down. Like I've noticed that I've been spraying at this angle, or trying to keep it at this angle, and as I speed up, I kind of start to shift it down. So my contrast changes on the miniature, which is unfortunate. I could go back and fix it, but I don't think I'm gonna, because I kind of just want to get these guys done. And if they're not as awesome looking as I wanted them to be, I will spend some more time a little bit later and go through with some other paints and fix them. But right now, I gotta get these guys done. On the weapons, I've been trying to paint like a highlight and then leaving the rest of it kind of dark so that the weapon will look like this. And that's the same kind of thing. Just a quick airbrush gives me a lot of contrast, and maybe I could put something on the edge right up here, and maybe something over there. Yeah, that's cool. Whoops, too much, too fast. Got a little spiderweb action going on right there. But you guys get the idea, I think. There's a lot that you can do with an airbrush. Highly recommend them. Don't spend a lot on them. Get whatever's cheap, learn how to use it, get good at it, and then upgrade if you want to keep doing it. Now there is a lot to be said for getting the best tools right off the bat, but with something as finicky as an airbrush, I know several people who have invested a couple of $100s into their airbrush setups, started doing it, and then decided that it wasn't for them. Then kind of felt bitter about it because they're out a couple of $100. But if they had only spent you know, maybe, I don't know, 60 or 70 up front to get an inexpensive airbrush that would do the job and an inexpensive compressor, then that doesn't hurt as much if you decide you don't like it. And man, use Harbor Freight, because spending a lot of money on stuff is not always the best way to go. Okay, so I've got everything primed. Pick the rest of the ink out. And generally speaking, we're done with the airbrush for now. I don't think that I'm going to come back to it tonight. I've got all my dudes primed and highlighted. Now I can apply the washes to them, and it should go really quickly. Yeah, you can see in there that is very white. So I'm going to add some distilled water to this, agitate it a little bit, try to get that out, try to get this ink out of here as fast as I can so that I can move on to the next step. I really enjoy using inks to paint with instead of using normal paints for the airbrush. They are usually very highly pigmented, and they're also most of them are very easily diluted and mixable, and it's very forgiving. Much more, it seems, much more than just the standard acrylic paints. So the inks that I go for are all just acrylic inks. Sometimes you'll find watercolor inks or other kinds of inks, like for pens, calligraphy. But if you look for the artist acrylic ink in your local hobby shop or on Amazon or something, you'll find a whole bunch of colors. They're all awesome. The two that I have found the most success with are the Daler Rowney. These guys, and then Liquitex. Liquitex makes a ton of artist supplies, and I use a bunch of their stuff for airbrushing. But any art supply shop should have them, like Hobby Lobby and Michaels have them. And if you're in Utah County, there's, I think it's called the Artist's Corner. It's by 400 South and Orem Boulevard. It's right behind Gunny's in Orem. That is a fantastic store for getting like obtuse art supplies. If you're looking for oil paints, they have a ton of them there, and they've got they have a whole bunch of different kinds of inks and thinners and everything that you could want for pretty decent prices. So I use them a lot too. This should be the last shot of Windex that I need to get out of here. Yeah. So now we'll do the distilled water just to make sure that everything's clean. Nope, I still had a couple more guys hanging out in there. Yeah, that water is cloudy. I don't think you can see it, but it is cloudy, and I don't want to leave the airbrush to dry with that stuff in there. So we'll do one more rinse, and we should be good to go. Oh man, half hour to get the guys to this state. So now this is really going to put my claim to the test of 5-minute miniatures. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to the bases. If I can't get to the bases, not a big deal. Probably just wash them with some oils and maybe put some grass tufts on them or something. Not sure yet. I'm not sure if I want it to be underground or like on the top of a mountain, or if I want it to be snow. Probably not snow. Snow is really specialized and doesn't always look the best on just generic miniatures. Like if you got a themed army or something, it can look cool, but I think these are supposed to be snow on the bases. But I'm just going to use it as dirt and probably have it be, oh man, top of a mountain. So I'll do some grass and stuff. I don't want the base to be black. Okay, you get out of there. I got my palette. Man, I've been working and helping the kids and trying to get everything done during the day, and I'm unprepared with my tools. They're all scattered everywhere. So the first thing that I'm going to use is the Guilliman Flesh contrast paint. That's going to be my skin tone for the dwarves. That's probably all we'll need. Some of these guys have fingers sticking out. Some of them have gloves. So as I go fast, I'm going to go in kind of assembly line mode, and hopefully I'm not painting any gloves with the Guilliman Flesh. Man, that never gets old. It's cool to see, like when you're in speed mode, this almost always works out. There are occasions when it doesn't, and I'll have to go back in and touch it up later, but generally speaking, that just looks awesome really quickly. So we got his hands, we got his face. I don't think he has ears sticking out. This guy's wearing gloves, so he just needs face. A little spot right there for his mouth. I'm going to pull that away. It's starting to pool on that side of his eye. I don't want that to. So I'll touch it just a little bit and make sure that he looks awesome. I only see one hand on you, and I don't think that's a glove. I think you just have a cuff on your shirt. So then your face. Good enough. Then, man, these old metal dwarves, these are pretty cool looking. Definitely a fan of the kind of ranger aesthetic of these old dwarves. Like, they're much more generic fantasy than Games Workshop style dwarves. Like, some of them have swords, the old ones, some of them have spears. They're not all axes and hammers. Unless you're a high elf, then apparently hammers are your thing now, which is weird. Hammers and over-the-top helmets. I don't know who made that decision. It kind of looks like, with those new Lumineth Realm Lords dudes, it kind of looks like they came across an old battlefield where many Bretonnian knights valiantly fell, and they said, hey, these guys have cool hats. And they chopped off the hats, glued them onto their helmets, and kept going. and really not a fan of those helmets. I think the models look cool, except for those helmets, so I'll probably buy a box and chop off the bull head and leave the rest. Keep my elvish, not Bretonnian. Okay, you got eyebrows. You got giant bushy eyebrows. I've been cleaning a whole bunch around my house lately, and I found the Fantasy Flight version of Legend of the Five Rings, the card game, CCG. The living card game now, it's not a CCG anymore. But I played, let's see, I started playing Legend of the Five Rings card game in Jade Edition. It's my first cards. And then I was really young then, so I didn't have the money to really understand what a customizable or collectible card game could be. And I kind of just got frustrated with it. I love the art and I love the story. And I kind of stepped away from it for a long time. And then I got back into it again in high school. And I collected Crab, I think, was the first deck that I bought. My brother bought Crane. You'll see some parallels in our play style and just about everything that we do, me and him. So for 40K, I played Blood Angels and Space Wolves and Imperial Guard, and he played Eldar. And in Warhammer Fantasy, I played Dwarves was my first army, and then I branched into Empire, and he played High Elves and Bretonnians and Wood Elves. And then in L5R, I played Lion and Unicorn and Crab, and he played Phoenix and Dragon and Crane was his main clan. So we're basically opposite play styles. In Privateer Press's games, I played Cawdor. And who are those other red guys in Hordes? Scorn. And my brother played the white guys, Menoth, Protector of Menoth. So he's always been kind of a sneaky elf, and I've always been kind of a brash dwarf. And it works out really well. It seemed like we'd always have one unit of Ironbreakers against, or Longbeards, against one unit of Swordmasters, and like he'd go and need to wound on, like he'd hit a couple of them and need to wound on 4s, and my armor save is a 3 or something crazy. Oh yeah, because you could take those extra wounds in Warhammer 5th and 6th. So my armor save is a 3 with the dwarves, and then, or a 4, and I'd go last always. My initiative was super low, so I'd hit a couple, I'd wound every single time, and then he'd make a couple of his armor saves. So we'd kill like one guy each turn, and we just have these 2 giant regiments like stuck in combat for just turn after turn after turn. And it was the same way with Blood Angels against Eldar, I'd have like a chaplain and some death company, on the top of a building, and he'd have these howling banshees, and just we'd battle, and one guy would die each turn, and it was terrible. Bikes, man, Space Marine bikes against howling banshees, that was just a slog to get through. Anyways, got the skin done. Let's do boots. I think they're all going to have, let's see, they are all going to have black boots. Yes, they're all going to have black boots. If I can find my black. So this is going to be Black Templar. That should be good enough. So I was cleaning, and I found all my L5R cards, but more importantly, I found the Fantasy Flight version of the game's cards in an unopened box that I've had sitting around since whenever Fantasy Flight acquired L5R. Unopened, and I decided, same way that I decided with these dwarves and with my Space Wolf dudes, you need some love. So I cracked open the box, watched a bunch of YouTube videos on how to play because I was too lazy to read the rule book, figured out how to play, made my decks, and now I'm just waiting for a chance to play. Been painting a ton and cleaning a ton and getting a lot of stuff ready, and haven't actually had that much time to play games during the quarantine. Started putting in our garden too, which took up a ton more time than I had anticipated. But super excited for the results of that. So everything's going to work out. And if you guys play L5R, let me know, because whenever the store opens back up, I would love to get in a couple of games with whoever has cards for that and is willing to play. That is a fantastic game. I'm not sure if I like this new version as much, mostly because I haven't played. I'm sure I will like it just fine. But there are, every time AEG changed something with the rules, I was always really skeptical of it. Like, I think this is going to break the game. I don't know if it's going to work anymore. And I always kept playing and buying more cards and loving everything about it. So I imagine the same thing will happen with Fantasy Flight's version. With speed painting stuff, I kind of like to block in parts that are less crucial first. Like the skin, it's hard to mess up the skin. It's hard to mess up things like boots and gloves. It's easier to mess up things like armor and weapons. I don't know why I do that, why I start with the those things first. I think it's probably something to do with maybe getting in the groove of painting quickly again, or I know why. It's contrast paint specific. When I'm painting with the contrast paints, when I'm painting like a whole miniature with the contrast paints, I like to go over those things first, like the boots and the skin and stuff, because the contrast paint will it's easy to get like a black lining effect with contrast paint, and the contrast paint is a little bit thicker than normal paint, and even when it dries it has kind of an edge to it, a little ridge. So if I block in those things first, then I can move my I can move the brush around a little bit more freely on the later stages of painting, and it feels a lot cleaner to me to paint that way. like if I make a mistake or if I'm going quickly, the mistake is more easily covered up in the later stages of painting. And once I get to those later stages, I can keep going quick because everywhere around those sections has like a little border of paint, a little border of the contrast paint that holds in the paint from spilling, from running, and it's just kind of nice all around. Next we'll do beards. So give me some Gore Grunta, if I can find it. Some of them can be blonde. Some of them will have dark hair. Some of them will have orange hair. Ish. Some of them will have black hair. And I don't know about this guy. I think he's supposed to be a slayer that was captured. So he's going to have bright orange hair. Bright orange hair. Clean the brush. I still got black. So this dude will have black hair. Remember, with the contrast paints, you want to tease it around. Put kind of a lot on. And then just keep it moving until you've covered the whole area that you're trying to paint. Then move on to the next area and do the same thing. Put it on kind of heavy and tease it around. And you'll be able to get a lot of movement out of it before it dries, before it gives you any problems. Paint behind that beard, or behind the, yeah, that's his beard. He's got hair on the back. So we'll get all of this stuff. Huh. I'm noticing he has a neck exposed. I guess I'll hit that last. So we've got black beard done. 1, 2, 3. One other guy can have a black beard, I suppose. No, his beard's going to be white. He looks super old. So this dude is going to have a black beard also. These youngin' dwarves. This guy's only 180 years old. Okay. Remember when you're painting to keep your brush clean, like rinse it frequently, because that tip is critical to keep in pretty decent shape. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be in decent shape. That's where your accuracy comes from. So black hair is done. we'll do the kind of red hair. So that's going to be Gore-Grunta fur. I don't know if I'm ever going to get used to these new paint names. They just seem super crazy to me. Dang, this guy's got hair everywhere. So if I've got a slop, this is not conducive to painting guys in 5 minutes. But you can go over it again with some water and just kind of brush it away. And usually that'll work to clean up anything that you might have as a mistake. Great, now I got too much water on my brush. Clean it out a little bit. Touch it to the paper towel. Keep going. Pick up more paint. That's more saturated. That's the color that I like. Touched it to his nose, so I'll just touch it with my finger. Pull the paint off. Get inside that little weapon area. Let's do a little bit more here on the sides where his hair is coming down. Come on, contrast paint, get in those recesses a little bit more. Alright, so that's the guy's thumb. Man, some of these old miniatures are really like weirdly sculpted. They got weird stuff on them and they're super crusty. We'll have, I got 2 guys left that are not going to have weird colored hair. So one of them is going to be blonde. For blonde, I'll either use Agros Dunes or Skeleton Horde. Skeleton Horde this time around. So this is the blonde dwarf. Yeah, he's going to need another coat. I should have used Agros Dunes. Just because it's a little bit more saturated. It's a little bit darker pigmented. And that would have given me a better result. As it is, this is fine. And if I've got time, I'll come back and hit it with a second coat. If not, it's alright. It's probably fine as is. And this dude is going to have wildwood for his hair. This wildwood is probably one of my very favorite colors ever. Of the contrast paint, at least. It is really dark. And I like it a lot. I find I use it for all kinds of things. I also just realized I wasn't paying attention to their eyebrows. So I might have to go back and hit those really quick. This guy's got eyebrows that are visible. The black-haired guy. So we'll hit those eyebrows real fast. Just gave him a unibrow. No eyebrows on him. He's got eyebrows. Blondie. That's it for eyebrows. Apothecary White for this dude's beard. That's not going to change it a ton, but it is going to add some tonal variations in there, which is nice. And then apparently I slopped where his bottom lip is a little bit, so I'll go back over that with some paint once I get a chance and touch that up. And then this orange is crazy bright. Gryph-hound orange. This is like when you imagine Rebel Alliance orange from Star Wars. That's what this is. It's very bright, very saturated. Perfect for Slayer hair. Come on, camera. I think all Games Workshop dwarfs have unibrows. Like bad ones. Let's see. Nope, I'm going to use this instead. So I like Basilicanum Gray, but I like Nuln Oil better for weapons. I'm going to give the whole thing a wash. Pretty heavily. And as you do your wash, if you're going for speed painting, people have a tendency to poke, remember. You don't want to poke. You can tease around, but keep that brush engaged with the surface the whole time. Don't like move it off, and like don't do this. Just kind of tease it around. Do we have any skeleton horde left over? We do. So we'll go over the helmet with the Nuln Oil. We'll go over the armor with the Nuln Oil. I just got a huge whiff of enamel primer smell. Might have to go back and turn up my air filter for a second. Yeah, on things like chainmail or any kind of a segmented armor, the more heavy that you put your wash, the more heavy you apply it, typically the better it's going to look. And it may run a lot, and when it does, you'll have to go underneath and like pick it up so that it doesn't pool and run everywhere on your miniature. But generally speaking, the heavier you put the Nuln Oil on, the better the effect of having like a 1 or a 2 coat kind of pseudo non-metallic metal just by using that the wash with the zenithal priming. It's all going to be different colors. So his weapon, his axe, he's got on a helmet, so that will take the Nuln Oil as well. And if it ever appears too bright, you can always come back and add more, but I'd be wary of adding a bunch on something like a helmet at the beginning, just because opposed to chainmail, the chainmail has a ton of little holes and pockets and recesses where that paint can hide and where it will add to the shadow. The helmet is just going to run off. Like right now, you can see it's kind of running off into his eye and making that whole spot dark. So I'm going to clean my brush, touch that a little bit because I don't want it to be there. I don't want it to be full of Nuln Oil. Then keep going. Okay, that's about it for his metal, his silver at least. I think I'm going to put a blue on their shields. Maybe green. Blue for dwarves looks very formal. Green can feel like it fits a little bit better. But I don't know. These guys, trying to reclaim their homeland, might wear blue. These guys out on an official quest for their homeland might wear green. Maybe I should decide what their homeland colors are first. Let's see, that guy's belly has some armor on it. So we'll put that on pretty heavy. He's got like a leather tunic or jerkin or something that he's wearing over his chain. Where else do you have metal? Here on your helmet. And then your weapon. You could almost just leave that. So I'm going to come back in here at the end and touch up these highlights with a little bit of silver on the metal parts on the armor. But for now, just going to call it good. Let's do the back of your shield too, just because I feel like I'm going to forget it and I want it to have some color on there besides being white. And you've got some chainmail on the front, and you've got some on the back. Yeah, I think these guys are going to be green. Maybe with some muted red or orange. But I think their color is green. So let's get his belly. The sides right here. This like back strip thing underneath his belt. Put a little bit more wash right there, just to darken up that shadow. We'll hit this over his armor. He's wearing a fur jacket also. So we'll get his helmet, his earpiece thing. There's a company called AK Interactive that makes weathering pencils. They're like watercolor pencils. So when you touch them to water, they paint. I really like them for weathering. I think I'm going to come back over the helmets and do a little bit of like not rust, but like some tarnish using those weathering pencils. If I got enough time here, I'll show you. I'm still going to keep broadcasting for a while and get as far as I can on these guys. We got your weapon, we got everything, you're done, kinda. I still need to hit your gloves, so let's get that part on your armor, right there. This. This guy's helmet. I think his arms are exposed too. I don't know why I didn't realize that at the beginning. Like, hey, that's not a Under Armour shirt. Those are his actual muscles. Okay, that's good for this dude. You have no metal on you. So we'll close up the Nuln Oil. We'll go to let's do the green. Not that kind of green. Not that kind of green. Maybe that kind of green. Or maybe this kind of green. I don't know. Militarum green is fairly like it's kind of a desaturated green. There's kind of a hint of some yellows in it. Creed Camo has some blue in it. I think I want to keep the Militarum green for the Ranger type dwarves, and then the rest of them are going to use this Creed Camo. Before I forget, I'm going to do that Miner's Arms. More Guilliman flesh. This is the dwarves' intimidation tactic. They send the guy with the biggest muscles up first, and he's like the grandpa of the group. So if the brigands see him, they're like, oh man, that's the old guy? What's everyone else like? Yeah, that'll work. So we'll take this contrast paint. Which is Creed Camo. Here's an instance where I want a finer brush. Finally. Put away the number 6. Take out the number 3. Oh, you are brand new. You still have glue on you. So when you're putting on these contrasts, you want them to go on as smooth as possible. Then you want to avoid as much streaking on them as possible. Just what I meant by smooth. So again, I really find the best way to use these is by teasing them around. And when you do that, it kind of eliminates most of the streaks and the weird pooling and stuff. Just put it on heavy like normal, and then just start teasing it around. all your shields are going to be green. You're still wet, so I can't do yours. You're still wet, so I can't do yours. But I can do yours. Just like crayons or colored pencils or something. Just drag that line around, that line of color. Till it's all smooth. And you got to try really hard to not stop, because if you stop, it's going to start to dry, and you're going to notice that lip or skin starts to form, and it's going to cause the rest of your painting to be really difficult on that piece. If you don't have a shield, you have a shield, and you are dry. On this different shield design, you can see I'm making some slops going on the edge. I don't know why, maybe it's just because I'm tired. But when I come back in with either the weathering pencils or the silver paint, I'll just paint right over that, and it should clean up pretty easily. Should be hidden pretty easily. Too lazy to wait, so we're going to paint this on anyways, over the slightly still not dried Nuln Oil. I don't think it's going to hurt it. There we go. Last guy. If you wanted it to be like a darker coloration, you can go over it another time or two and it'll darken up substantially. That's what I was going to do. I forgot. For all their horns, I'm going to take Agarose Dunes and put that on the horn, on their helmets. And then I'll go over it afterwards with some white or like a cream color or something. I'll do the same thing for the candle on the miner's head. Okay, I think that's all the horns. So we're going to keep using the Creed camo. Nope, just changed my mind. They're all going to be green, but they're all going to match. So instead of using Creed camo, we're going to use the Militarum green for their clothing. So the lacquer on the shield is not going to be the exact same color green as their clothes. It'll be a little bit off, which I think is going to look good. And then same thing here, where these are kind of smooth pieces like the shield was. I'm going to put on kind of a lot of paint and then just tease it around until it's all in everywhere that I want it to go. A little bit right up in there. And this guy's got some kind of sweet looking bracelet. I'm going to try to not paint that green. We'll paint it gold a little bit later on. Alright, so he's got his green. And this dude. Okay. This dude. Nice. And this guy. And that arm is just right in front. So I gotta make sure that looks top notch. Because everyone that looks at that miniature is gonna see that arm. Okay, so they've all got green on them except for this guy, the miner. But I don't really care because he's a miner. He's not necessarily an above ground guy. So that's the green on him. Now we will do the rest. We're going to use snakebite leather for their pouches. I need black Templar for the miner's gloves. And we're going to use wildwood for their straps and stuff. So first, the miner's gloves. I don't think I'm going to do straight black. I'll mix the black with whatever other color I have here, Agros Dunes or something, just so it's not black everywhere. Yeah, that's still a really dark color, but it's not straight black. There's some variation in there, which looks nice. Alright, his gloves are done. So now we'll do snakebite leather. So all these little pouches and stuff they have on them are going to be snakebite leather. Like, I don't know what this is, but it's not hair. It's going to be snakebite leather. This pouch is going to be snakebite leather. That's it. This guy has some kind of pouch or something back here. So we'll hit that with the snakebite leather. This dude has a lot of belts. This will be snakebite leather. The wrap on the two-handed axe. That's probably it. Excuse me. Your little beard wrap thing can be snakebite leather. Don't see any of the pouches on you. So your weapon wrap will be snakebite leather. And you will have something. You got a ton of stuff. All right. Your quiver bottom part is going to be snakebite leather. That's it. Oh, you got a wrap on your weapon too. So that will do snakebite leather, and that's it. That's it for the snakebite leather. Then I need my Agrax Earthshade, my Wildwood. So Agrax I'll use for, whoops, took the whole thing off. Did it again. we go. So Agrax Earthshade I'll use for like the tunics and stuff, or the tunics, the other stuff that they have on them, like this guy's cuff on his shirt. Basically anything else that's not the edge of the armor is going to be Snakebite Leather, or sorry, Agrax Earthshade. I must be getting tired. This whole quarantine thing is messing me up. Sometimes the days feel like weeks. Sometimes everything just goes by so fast. Today was a really fast day. Yeah, the inside wood on the shield will be Agrax Earthshade. And with the Agrax, you can kind of just hit it everywhere. His pants will be Agrax Earthshade. Like anything that's not painted at this point, I'm just gonna kind of throw some of that throw some earth shade on it, and it'll look just fine when it's done. Maybe we'll do 2 coats. If I can remember, we'll do 2 coats. This guy's got that cuff above. Something's right there. I think that was a piece of armor that I missed. Yeah, we'll do his jacket in that Earthshade color, the inside of the shields. And the jacket on the back. This one's definitely going to need 2 coats. It's probably good. And then the Ranger needs the Earthshade on all the wood, because he's got a crossbow on his back. So all of this wood stuff on the crossbow is going to be Agrax Earthshade. And then if I've still got some Agros Dunes left, I will paint the ropes in that Agros Dunes color. Oh, I do have a little bit left. All right, ropes. Agros Dunes for you. And let's do these fletchings with that Earthshade as well. Apparently, I missed the outside of his shield with Nuln Oil. So we'll go back and do that now. I always feel like the chef on Little Mermaid every time I forget to paint something like this. Come to the end, close up the oven, everything's ready to go. What? I have missed one. Then the Wildwood we're going to use for all of their the leathery parts on their armor is all going to be Wildwood. So this stuff right here, Wildwood. And and I'll come back in later and touch the these little metal studs with some silver, and this will look pretty good. Yeah, so every place there's these little armor things. I don't know what they are. This one looks like a belt. I don't know what the others are. I'm going to do it in Wildwood. Wildwood sounds like the name of a TV show. Like a Western. Wildwood. Or a fantasy Western set in a magical forest. There are wood elves. The name of the show is called Wildwood. The wood elves have a sheriff. He's kind of hapless, and he has to keep the forest safe from the encroaching humans. He doesn't quite know how to do it, so he enlists the help of all the forest creatures, and their antics and exploits are captured in the series Wildwood. It could be like Once Upon a Time, except it wouldn't get weird. And we'd use all of the Russian fairy tales, Peter and the Wolf style, where bad things happen in the forest for no other reason than it's the forest, and that's what happens there. The moral of every story is stay out of the forest. Starting to like that idea. Man, this guy's got like 3 belts on. So I tease, except every time I go to the range, what am I wearing? 3 belts. Yeah. Maybe this guy should be my hero instead. This guy's the Sheriff of Wildwood. With his pipe. No, it can't be a dwarf. It needs to be an elf. This guy'd make an awesome sheriff, though. He's got the mustache for it. Okay, now this guy. So as you clean your brush off, make sure that you're preserving that tip. You can like roll your brush in your paper towel or your palette, and bring that point, bring the bristles back to a sharp point. Geez, I'm for sure getting tired. I said bring the bristles back. That made me think of brisket. I think I need a snack. Next paint night is going to have an intermission. I'll find some non-copyrighted elevator music, or a good Western theme, and we'll play that for 5 minutes from 8 o'clock to 8:05. And then at 8:05, we'll resume the regularly scheduled program. Hey, if any of you guys play Destiny, look me up later. I am on PS4. I am Kovnik Mirsad, so that's KOVNIK_MIRSAD. Let's play a game. Trying to think of what this dwarf slayer that's all tied up, what his rope colors are going to be. I'm not sure. Doing a lot of rope like that is kind of tricky because it tends to look really bland. The same way anything else would, like a lot of armor or a lot of chainmail or a lot of skin in one spot. If you don't add variation to it and a lot of like heavy, sharp, light, and dark contrast, it's just going to look like a giant blob. You can also do some texturing to it. That's probably what I should do. Just use the weathering pencils and put some grime on it in different spots. Okay, last guy for the wildwood. And then I'll go back through and touch up all of the... Well, I got to do the Agrax Earthshade one more time. And we'll touch up everything else and should be good to go. Get these guys on the table. Too lazy to pull out that. Nope, I got to do it. I was going to cheat and water down some wildwood. It's not going to look the same. I want the Agrax Earthshade. So we'll put that on as fast as possible. The front of your vest thing. Oh, got some serious hiccups going on. You're done. We'll do a little bit more over that pipe. Otherwise, you're done. You're about there. Oh, the rope. Keep forgetting these little tiny details. So that rope should have 2 coats. It only has 1 right now. Then, let's see. This is kind of a gross color. It's Plague Bearer Flesh. As you can see, it's got like green and yellow mixed into it. A little bit of brown. I'm going to use this for the colors of the ropes. Oh, it looks like something rotten. That looks like Plague Bearer Flesh. Yeah, that's pretty gross. All right. I'll have to do some weathering on that. That's looking pretty yellow. So I'll tone that down and add some grime and stuff to it. Other than that, I'm going to use Black Templar for the haft of all of the weapons. Normally I would use black, but black takes a little bit longer to put on than the Black Templar. So this will be good enough. I've been liking my weapon handles, or hafts or whatever, to just be black. It tends to give the eye more of an ability to focus on the head of the weapon. Like in this case, the haft of this axe isn't anything special. If we were going to do something cool with it, it would be on the top part. But a lot of times weapons are close to faces. Like this dude is holding his weapon super close. So if you have something else that is a bright color next to someone's face, we're going to have a hard time keeping our eye on the face where it should be, and it will want to go to or switch between the weapon and the face. So giving some extra black helps to delineate the different pieces a little bit more for our brains. And it doesn't always look good, but usually I think it looks pretty decent. If we wanted to add something more to it later, we could. It's not a big deal to go and do a line of silver or gold or something over the top of it, or even to paint it brown afterwards if that's what you want. But especially painting like units of guys, I'll almost always do black weapons. Black weapon handles and hafts and stuff. Unless there's a wrap on it. This guy's going to have a lot of black on him. That's another thing I was thinking about with doing his gloves not entirely black, with mixing in the Agarose Dunes, is that with the black weapon haft, I didn't want everything in front of him to just be black. So his gloves have been warmed up pretty significantly with the yellow of Agarose Dunes. Now he's got or now he'll have that black as kind of a contrast. I don't know if you can see that that's more of a distinction in color there. Oh, jeez. Missed a spot on the top of his shield. Okay. With the exception of some straight Agros dunes that I want to add for a couple of gold pieces, these guys are done. So I wanted to add Agros dunes for his bracelet thing. That's gold. I wanted to add it for he's got some gold stuff around his belly in the front. And then later on I can go over this with some gold metallic paint, and that will make this sparkle like dragon treasure. I don't know what's going on back there, but I missed a piece. Oh, and he's got a giant bracelet on and a thing on his head. I need more paint. Need more Agros dunes, just a little bit. So we'll go around his bracelet thing. Whoops, got some black in there. I forgot to clean out my brush. Not a big deal. And then the thing on the front of his helmet is going to be gold too. And I think that's, oh fine, we can paint that gold. I think that's it. Okay, well there you have it. Essentially, these guys are done. I'll get my flashlight and show you. Come on, flashlight. Now, if you want to stick around, I'll show you the cool stuff. We're just going to keep going until it's done, because I got to do these bases. If I don't do them, I'm never going to. These are weathering pencils from AK Interactive. They're things like gunmetal graphite and rain marks and strong ochre. So this is how I'm going to do the bases. I'm going to use dark rust. I'm going to use streaking dirt. And I'm going to use rubber. And there's runes on here too that I'm going to do with light blue. or should we use the oil paints? The oil paints are probably going to work out much better than using the weathering pencils. Yeah, we're going to do the oil paints. So I got to go back to the airbrush for a minute. Thank you, new brush. You were fantastic. This is clear acrylic. It's kind of a matte, flat. So I'm going to add this. I'm going to spray this over the miniatures. Because we're using, this will give them kind of a protective coat while I'm doing the base. The acrylic has glued itself to the side of the bottle. I don't want that. That's gross. It's pretty boogery. So when you mix oil paints with acrylics and enamels and stuff, it works really well because they're not, like when the oils are on there, if you paint acrylic over it, the water won't reactivate the enamel. And the other way is true too. If you paint using, oh geez, I just got more of that stuff stuck all over me. I don't remember what I was saying, but they work both ways. Like the water won't reactivate the oil paints, and the oil thinner won't reactivate the water that you used for the acrylics and wash everything off. So you can preserve the paints that you've got on the layer beneath it by using the opposite type of paint above it. But it's always a good idea to use some kind of a sealer just to make sure that you're not physically scraping off part of the paint underneath with your brush or your Q-tip or whatever you're using. So I'm going to give these guys a quick coat of acrylic, and you can use any kind of a spray stuff. If you use the spray cans like the Testors Dull Coat and stuff, that works fantastic, but this just dries a lot faster. So I'm going to use this instead. Oh, and I said I wasn't coming back to the airbrush, but never believe that. If I ever put the airbrush away, just remind me, Mike, don't put it all the way. You're going to use it again. All right, airbrush, brush, where'd you go? Got it. Move the water out of the way. Line these guys up again. So if you want to take the time to, you could paint eyes on these and add some extra highlights, which I may do at a later time. But I want to get the bases finished, and I want to get these guys, crap, I'll probably do some silver on them anyways. I can't get away from it. All right, what do I need? I'm doing acrylics, so we'll do some water, and then we'll scoop up some paint with this. There's some clear varnish. Now this stuff I have learned goes really fast, so you gotta really put a lot in to make it go any appreciable distance. Otherwise, you're just going to be refilling this reservoir forever. Should always thin whatever you're putting in. It doesn't matter how thin it is. Add some water to it, or thinner, or whatever you use. Always keep thinning your airbrush paints. Okay, Ron, sorry, I totally forgot about the the Discord. So Ron, I'm using Nuln Oil. I use the Nuln Oil gloss for Stormtroopers. If I'm painting over the top of metal, I'll use that sometimes. And for, oh geez, these guys. Infinity, that's what I was thinking of. Infinity uses, or I use Nuln Oil gloss on Infinity miniatures. It works so nice. Also, Ron, for what game are you playing? Is that PlayStation? I'm playing Destiny most of the time. Destiny 2. Okay, so mix this up. Then we're going to coat these guys real fast. Another thing that you'll notice when you start airbrushing a lot is the if you airbrush on like primer or zenithal stuff, or if you do any kind of airbrushing on your miniatures, you have got to seal that stuff because it is such a thin coat that a lot of times just the action of running a brush over the top of your the miniatures that have that airbrush layer on them, it's just going to brush a lot of that paint off. So clear coat the crap out of them. Yeah, this guy looks so flat. He needs some extra layers. Not from contrast paint, but from actual stuff. We'll do one more coat just on the bases to make sure that I've got it all covered. I may have been a little overzealous with my filling the reservoir with whatever this is called, clear coat. So the miniatures that I use a lot for displays and teaching people how to paint, I'm going to give those another coat of clear coat. The miniatures that my daughter handles and uses all the time, we'll coat those again, just because she's got greasy hands and it'll help to preserve the paint. She's been loving these Zombicide miniatures. Anytime she picks up a miniature, so she's 3, but anytime she picks up a miniature, she always asks me, metal or plastic? And then I'll tell her, like, plastic or metal or whatever, and A lot of times if it's metal, she'll just put it back because she knows that you got to be more careful with the metal ones. She doesn't want to break them. Or if it's printed, if she knows that it's printed in resin, she'll be careful with it too, like extra careful. She's almost to the stage where she can handle the miniature by the base only, but not quite. She also knows that the bad guys aren't painted as well as the good guys. So a lot of times she'll kind of manhandle the bad guys, and she still knocks them over, which drives me nuts. Like when the good guys are fighting them, she'll kick into them and knock them over. Like, yeah, don't do that. It's fine, you're 3. I'd rather have you get addicted to this early than late. But still. Okay. The rest of this is going in the cleaning pot. One thing of Windex, swish swish, just to make sure we get all the stuff out. The reservoir is cloudy, which I like to see. It means that I did a good job of cleaning. And then one more rinse with distilled water. I'll often run my finger inside the reservoir just to make sure that I've got everything cleaned out of there. Sometimes there's some stubborn pieces that get stuck if you're using a lot of paint or if you're painting for a long time. Okay, that's it for the airbrush for tonight. Then I forgot what I was going to do. Oil paints. Oils are dang cool. Get tangled up in my airbrush hose. So what do we want? Top of a mountain, huh? Let's use black because it's always useful. Let's use burnt umber. Let's use yellow ochre. And maybe a little bit of some phthalo blue. So, with the oils, you got to use something to thin them with. All right, I'm getting too many things here. I don't need that anymore. I don't need the water anymore, but I do need some of this terpenoid stuff. People use all kinds of different thinners. It doesn't matter what you use as long as you're using something to thin the brush or to thin the paints and to clean the brush that's not water. So there's my black. I'll show you my palette in a second. Using these little tubes of oil. I think think I got these at Hobby Lobby with the 40% off. Apparently I haven't opened that one. Thought I did. You do not need very much oil paint to go a really long ways. The thinners will extend your use of the oil paints a ton. And oil paints are kind of like contrast paints in that they are hyperpigmented. That's like all it is pigment. So as long as you've got a lot of thinner, you can go a really long ways. And I was using this for my, yep, it's kind of crusty. I was using this for my oil brush. That's just an older brush that had it too. It's a size 2. And then I need my pipette. I'll put it over here. So I'm using a pipette to squeeze up some thinner. And then I'll put the, I didn't show you. So this is my palette with there's 3 oils on the bottom, and then my black is over here. And then the rest of these spots are the contrast paints that I was using. So I'll put a couple of drops of thinner with each paint. That leaves me a couple extra drops. Then let's pick up some black, and we'll pick up some brown, mix them together in the thinner, and then I'm going to apply that here. I don't know if you can see that. It's cool though. Using the thinner is having a similar effect as using alcohol, like it pulls the paint into the recesses, and especially on something like this where there's a whole bunch of like bushy kind of outcroppings with the, I think this is intended to be snow. It's not going to be for me though. It really helps to give some nice coverage to everything very quickly. Want it to be just a little darker back here. A little more brown up front. Yep, that's nice. That looks solid. Okay, cool. That's done. Put this over the rock. And with the oils, the cool thing is you almost don't have to do a good job when in your application of the oils, because they take so long to dry. You can keep working with them, and if you just add more thinner, most of it will wash away. So you can kind of start over and keep adjusting and working with it and pushing the paint around and teasing it into all of the nooks and crannies and stuff and getting the specific right color that you want while still working on your canvas. And then you can load Q-tips or a brush or anything else with your thinner of choice, and then go back over your oils later and pull the color off, and that looks really cool. I'll show you some things that I painted in just a second with that. Some Starship interiors. So like this is going on really heavy, but I'll go back in a little bit and clean this up. Like you can see, it's really dark and then really bright in the front. It's all going to work out. Want a little bit more black in there. That's a little too brown. Need some more thinner. Just squirt several drops out of the pipette. Pick up some more paint. Some more thinner, keep going. Cover up all of that stuff in the front because it doesn't matter right now. Need some more thinner on the black side. It's getting to be a little too brown. All right, cool. So my black-brown mix is working out nicely. This does tend to soak up a whole bunch of thinners though. I've noticed as you paint, you're going to go through, you're not going to go through a ton, but like it, to get the right consistency for the paint to run smoothly, you need a lot of thinner for doing weathering and stuff. I have not played around much with doing oil paints as a primary source of color on the miniatures, just as only as weathering. But I think it's probably too thick to paint the miniatures. But to do all the weathering, it's fantastic. Okay, that looks really nice. Now, I got to clean this brush a little bit. So put that, squirt the rest of the pipette into this little solvent cup. Clean out the brush as much as I can. You're never going to get your brushes completely clean when you're using oils. Don't worry about it. Just buy new ones. Another plus for not using expensive stuff all the time. Okay, here's the cool part. Now, you get ye old Q-tip. And you see how this is really dark, like way dark. You just dunk your Q-tip into your solvent and then gently rub it away. It's almost like the filth of Saruman is washing away kind of style. So you don't need to rub the Q-tip into the recesses. You want it to stay on the surface. And it's going to help to blend the paint a little bit. And it's going to pull that paint away, which will give you some nice lighter colors wherever you're using this. And then the darker colors should stay in the recesses pretty well. And just gonna move this around, pull up some of that stuff. Now we're back to that looking like rock, and then you're going to go through a lot of Q-tips too. Move that around a little bit, pull some thinner straight onto the brush, and try to. There's some red that's hiding out there that I don't want to be there. But just keep kind of brushing it around until you get the effect and the color that you want, and then stop. That guy's base is done. This guy doesn't have very much rock on him, but I think we're going to pull up some of his stuff in the back here. Yeah, that's nice. So now these rocks look a lot brighter than the surrounding. It's supposed to be snow, probably. For me, it's going to be dirt. So that's nice. This guy, not sure what I'm going to. I should have clipped him off. Clipped that stuff off of his feet before gluing him on, but I didn't. Now he's stuck there. I don't know, it kind of looks like he's on an altar or something, like a dragon's going to come flying out of the sky and eat him. Oh, hey, we can do some of this with the oils too. Scuff him up a little bit, at least those ropes. Make it look not so clean. Alright, who else's base am I cleaning you for? Yeah, so where that's really dark in the front, solvent on the Q-tip pulls it right up. You gotta be careful to not leave Q-tip debris left on your miniatures from doing this, because it's easy to do if you have sharp corners. You can pull up, you can leave behind some Q-tip chunks. Did we get this guy? No, not yet. That was fast. Last couple of dudes. Just kind of rolling this over the surface. I accidentally pulled up too much, so I will apply some more paint in a second. Yeah, that's a little bit too dark, or too light now right there. So let's get some more black, a little bit more brown. Was a lot more paint than I intended to put on there. You kind of have to let this paint dry before you start pulling it up with the Q-tips. Maybe it's not really dry. Maybe it's like set, or I don't know. I'm not a traditional medium artist, so I don't really know how the oils behave, but I know how they work on miniatures. So whatever they're doing, setting or something, you just kind of got to let them sit, whatever, do their thing for a few minutes before you pull them up. Gonna make this beard a little bit sooty. And then last thing here, the cool part about the Q-tips is that it acts like a dry brush where you won't pull up the underneath parts as much, like the depressions. Base is done, except I want to put some of this bright blue. Oh, that is so bright blue. Into these runes. Should probably use a different brush. But I want just kind of a hint of blue going on here. I think I need some more blue. Okay, you can't see that at all on the camera, but those are now blue. And there's some runes on the rest of these. So I'll just touch it to it, and it should, that capillary action should pull the blue inside. Yep, that's working nice. So these runes just got dark. A little bit right there, right there, right there. Oh man, there's runes all over this base. That's cool. And need a little more thinner. It's starting to act like paint and not like the thinned wash that I want it to be. It's not running as much. Cool. Last guy. Okay, that's about that. Yeah, that's painting. super. Ended up taking a lot longer than I wanted it to, but relatively quickly, that's how you paint. So the only thing left that these guys need is a little touch up of silver on the edges of their weapons if you want. The non-metallic metal look is kind of in vogue right now, but whatever you want them to look like, you can do it. And because you did a zenithal spray, you can use the metallic paints and make like a true metallic pretty easily. And it's also really easy to do that with washes. Sorry, with oil washes. What else? They need a black edge around the base. And then they are done. My oil painting brush is done. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. These guys are kind of glossy right now with the oils not completely dry, but as soon as they are dry tomorrow or the next day, I'll put some photos of these guys up on the Discord for you to check out. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, let me know, and I will see you guys next Thursday. Have a great night, paint lots of stuff, and